6:40 in the morning. You reach down to greet your cat, and your thumb finds it before your eyes do. A crust, a little rusty ridge in the corner of her eye, welded to the fur, the same one you wiped away yesterday and the day before that. And sitting on your counter, that little bottle from the vet, $38, gone in 2 weeks. You know the routine. You warm a cotton pad, you dab, she squints and pulls away, and by morning the crust is back exactly where it was. You are not treating this, you are cleaning up after it, and every cleanup costs you money while the actual problem sits there untouched. What if I told you that the crust in the corner of your cat's eye is almost never the thing you're trying to treat? What if the gunk is a symptom of a plumbing problem, a blocked drain pipe behind your cat's face, and there is a single dried leaf, one you can steep like tea in your own kitchen tonight, a folk remedy for tired eyes long before modern drops existed? Not as a miracle cure, as the gentle half of a method paired with a 60-second technique that does the actual work of clearing the debris that keeps the pipe backed up. I'm a veterinarian. In my clinic, weepy eyes and morning eye gunk are among the most common complaints I hear from cat owners, and they are also among the most misunderstood. So grab a notebook or open the Notes app on your phone, because I'm going to walk you through this the way I'd explain it if you were sitting across from me. Here is exactly what we're covering. First, I'll show you why that morning crust is almost never an infection, and what it actually tells you about a drainage system called the nasolacrimal duct, the real reason those expensive drops keep failing you. Second, I'll show you the one dried leaf, Eyebright, that you can steep into a gentle rinse in your own kitchen for pennies, and I'll be straight with you about what the lab evidence shows and what it doesn't. Third, I'll give you the exact steeping method, the water temperature, the steep time, and the one straining step almost everyone skips that decides whether this helps or hurts. Fourth, I'll show you the 60-second warm compress technique that opens a partially blocked duct from the outside, no restraint battle required. And fifth, I'll tell you the one specific sign that means you stop everything and drive to a real vet that day. Because there is a version of this problem where a home rinse is the wrong answer, and I will not let you miss it. Stay with me, because there's one thing about those over-the-counter drops that surprised even me when I first read the research, and I'll come back to it once you understand how the drain pipe works. Let me tell you about a cat named Biscuit. Biscuit is a 9-year-old orange tabby. She belongs to a woman named Carol who lives outside Sacramento, and Carol loves this cat the way people love a cat that has outlived a marriage and 2 moves. For about 8 months, Biscuit had what Carol called a leaky eye. The left one. It watered constantly. The fur beneath it stayed damp, then stained a reddish-brown, then started to smell faintly sour. Every morning there was a crust. Carol did everything right by the standard playbook. She went to the vet. She got a bottle of medicated drops. She spent, and she added this up for me later, over $200 across 4 months on drops, a recheck, and a second bottle of a different drop when the first one didn't work. Here's the part that matters. The drops did nothing, because the drops were aimed at the wrong problem. Biscuit did not have an eye infection that started on the surface of the eye. Biscuit had a tear that couldn't drain. Think about your own eye for a second. Your eye is always wet. It has to be. A thin film of tears washes across it every time you blink, and then that fluid has to go somewhere. It drains through a tiny hole in the inner corner of your eye, down a duct behind your nose, and out. Your cat has the exact same system. When that drain pipe, the nasolacrimal duct, gets narrowed or blocked, the tears have nowhere to go, so they spill over the edge of the eyelid and run down the face. The medical word for that overflow is epiphora, and a paper in the journal Disease a Month back in 2020 described obstruction of that nasolacrimal duct as an important cause of exactly this kind of tear overflow. So Biscuit's eye wasn't crying because it was infected. It was crying because the drain was clogged, and the standing, overflowing tears sat in the fur, and warm, damp fur is where the smell and the secondary irritation come from. The drops targeted the surface. The clog was in the pipe. That is why 4 months and $200 bought Carol nothing but a cleaner crust. And Biscuit is not a rare case. In my clinic, this exact pattern, one weepy eye, a stained cheek, a crust that keeps coming back, and an owner who's already spent real money on drops that didn't touch it, is one of the most common things I see. If you're watching this with a damp cotton pad in your hand, Biscuit's story is very likely your cat's story. So let's open up that drain pipe and understand what's actually happening inside it, because once you see the mechanism, everything about the fix makes sense. Here is the whole thing in one sentence. Tears are produced at the top of the eye. They wash across the surface, and they're supposed to drain out through a duct at the inner corner, and morning gunk means that drain is backed up. Now, why does it back up? A few reasons, and they matter, because they change what you do. The duct can be narrowed from chronic low-grade inflammation, so it's technically open but running slow, like a pipe furred with mineral scale. It can be blocked by debris, dried mucus, cellular gunk, the very crust you keep wiping away, working its way inward. And in some cases, the whole system just isn't draining efficiently, even though nothing is physically plugging it. That last one has a name. A 2025 paper in the Indian Journal of Ophthalmology laid out the full spectrum of causes of this tear overflow and specifically flagged what it called functional epiphora, a drainage failure that gets overlooked because there's no obvious plug as a commonly missed cause. In plain terms, the pump and the pipe just aren't moving fluid the way they should. When that fluid stalls, 3 things happen in sequence. First, tears pool at the inner corner instead of draining. Second, they overflow onto the fur and sit there, warm and wet, all day. Third, that standing moisture becomes crust overnight and, over weeks, a stained, sour-smelling patch. The crust you see at 6 in the morning is the end of that chain, not the start of it. Now, here's the part that surprised me, and it's the open loop I promised you. Those over-the-counter and even some prescription eye drops are preserved with a chemical called benzalkonium chloride. It keeps the bottle from growing bacteria. But research in the journal Cornea, back in 2000, showed that benzalkonium chloride is toxic to the cells on the surface of the eye in laboratory testing, and follow-up work published in Advances in Experimental Medicine and Biology tied that same preservative to preservative-induced dry eye. Sit with that. A cat with an irritated, overflowing eye gets a drop preserved with a compound that lab studies link to surface cell damage and dryness. You are, in some cases, adding irritation to an eye that's irritated. That's not a reason to panic about every medicine your vet prescribes. It's a reason to understand that grab a drop is not automatically the gentle choice it sounds like. So Biscuit's blocked pipe, sitting in preservative-laced drops, was never going to resolve. What that eye needed was gentle mechanical clearing, warmth, moisture, and a careful wipe to soften and lift the debris, plus a rinse that didn't fight the tissue. Which brings us to the leaf. And let me be upfront about the leaf's job, because I won't oversell it. Eyebright is the gentle, traditional part of this method. The warm compress and the wiping are what actually clear the debris. Keep those rolls straight, and everything that follows will make sense. Before I give you the how, let me show you the 2 cats you're most likely looking at right now, because I want you to find yourself in one of them. The first is Biscuit's twin, and there are thousands of her. Middle-aged, one weepy eye, reddish stain, a crust that returns overnight. Owners already spent $100, $200 on drops. This is the narrowed, debris-clogged duct, the classic. For this cat, gentle clearing is the whole game. The second cat is a Persian named Winston, and Winston represents a huge slice of the cat world, the flat-faced breeds. Persians, Himalayans, exotic shorthairs. Because of the shape of their skull, the drain pipe is short, kinked, and prone to backing up from birth. Winston's owner, a man named Devraj in Houston, assumed the tear staining was just how Persians look. Partly true, but the constant damp and crust still meant standing fluid and secondary irritation he could reduce. For the flat-faced cats, this isn't about a cure, it's about daily management that keeps the fur dry and the eye comfortable, and a warm rinse fits that perfectly. Two cats, two versions of the same wet eye, the classic clog and the flat-faced backup. There's a third version, the one that's actually a medical emergency wearing this same disguise, and I'll show it to you in step 5, because I made you a promise about when to stop. Now, here is exactly what to do, in order, starting tonight. Step 1. Identify what you're dealing with before you touch anything. Look at the eye itself, not just the fur. The eyeball should be clear and comfortable. The cat should not be squinting hard, pawing at the eye, or keeping it clamped shut. The discharge should be watery or slightly mucousy, clear to pale, not thick green or yellow pus. If the eye looks clear and the trouble is really the overflow and the crust, you're likely in home remedy territory. If it's not, skip to step 5 right now. Step 2. Get Eyebright and get the right form. Eyebright is a small flowering herb, euphrasia, traditionally used on tired, irritated eyes in folk practice for centuries. And here is exactly what the modern evidence says, no more and no less. A study in the Balkan Medical Journal in 2014 assessed Eyebright extract on human corneal cells in the lab, and separate work in 2025 in a Kazakh pharmacy journal cataloged the biologically active compounds in the herb. That is lab bench evidence. There are no controlled feline trials proving Eyebright clears a blocked tear duct. The clearing in this method comes from the warm compress and the mechanical wiping. The Eyebright is simply a traditional, gentle liquid to do it with. You want the plain dried loose herb, or plain dried Eyebright tea bags with nothing added, no menthol, no oils, no soothing blend, just the leaf. Step 3. And this is the one people get wrong. Steep it correctly and strain it obsessively. Boil your water and let it cool for a minute so it's hot, not violently boiling. Pour about 1 cup over 1 teaspoon of the dried herb or 1 plain tea bag and let it steep a full 10 minutes so the herb's compounds, including the same class of astringent tannins characterized in the journal Phytochemistry back in 1980, the compounds this plant is traditionally valued for, actually release. Then let it cool to lukewarm, barely warm on your wrist. Now strain it, twice, through a coffee filter. This is the step almost everyone skips, and it's the one that decides everything. A single stray fleck of herb against a cat's eye is worse than the crust you started with. It must be perfectly clear, particle-free liquid. When in doubt, strain a 3rd time. Step 4. Apply it as a rinse and compress, not a battle, and understand that this step is the workhorse of the whole method. Soak a clean cotton pad in the lukewarm strained liquid. Wring it so it's damp, not dripping. Lay it gently against the closed outer eye and the crusted fur, and just hold it there for 60 seconds. Warmth plus moisture softens the crust, so it lifts instead of tears, and it warms the tissue over the duct. Then wipe once, gently, from the inner corner outward, and throw the pad away. That compress and that wipe are what's doing the clearing. The Eyebright just keeps it gentle. Fresh pad for the other eye, Never the same pad twice, never one eye to the other. Do this once, maybe twice a day. For most weepy, crusty eyes, you'll see the fur staying drier within several days. Talk to your own vet before you start if there's any doubt, because I can't examine your specific cat through a screen. Step 5, and this overrides everything above. You stop, and you go to a real veterinarian that day if you see any of these. The eyeball itself looks cloudy, red, or you can see the third eyelid up across it. Your cat is squinting hard, holding the eye shut or pawing at it. The discharge is thick, green, or yellow. There's swelling below the eye toward the nose, or your cat seems painful, off her food, or hiding. Here's the third version of this wet eye I warned you about. A case report published in the journal Veterinary Ophthalmology in 2025 described a cat whose tear duct was blocked by an actual stone, a dacrylith, with a secondary infection sitting behind it. Same weepy eye on the outside, completely different problem underneath. A hard, gritty little something you can almost feel in the inner corner. A home rinse cannot clear a physical obstruction with an infection behind it, and delaying real care to steep more tea is how a fixable eye becomes a lost one. Eyebright soothes, it does not perform surgery. Now here's one move that even a lot of owners doing everything else right never think of, and it addresses the root of this whole thing instead of the eye. Half the reason that drain pipe stays backed up is that the fur around the inner corner is permanently damp, and damp fur wicks fluid back toward the eye and holds the crust in place. So once a day, after your rinse, take a bone-dry cotton pad or a soft tissue and gently dry that inner corner fur completely. Just dry it. It sounds too simple to matter. It matters enormously because you're breaking the wet, fur holds, fluid holds, crust cycle that keeps regenerating the problem overnight. For the flat-faced breeds like Winston especially, where the pipe will always run slow, this daily 30-second drying does more for long-term comfort than any drop I've ever prescribed. One caution: keep it dry drying only, no rubbing, and stay off the eyeball itself. If the fur is stained so deep it won't lighten, that staining is old and cosmetic. Leave it, and focus on keeping today's tears from adding to it. So let me leave you with the one thing I need you to actually remember. That crust in the corner of your cat's eye at 6 in the morning is not the disease. It's the overflow from a blocked drain, and the honest research, from Disease a Month to that 2025 paper in the Indian Journal of Ophthalmology, points at the plumbing, not at some surface infection a $30 bottle of preservative was ever going to fix. Steep the leaf. Strain it like your cat's eye depends on it, because it does. Warm compress for 60 seconds. The compress does the work, the leaf keeps it gentle. Dry the fur. And know the 5 red line signs that mean the leaf is the wrong tool and it's time for a doctor. This is educational, not a diagnosis of your specific cat. When in real doubt, your vet wins. If this made the crust in the corner of your cat's eye make sense for the first time, do me one small favor and hit the like button, because it genuinely helps this land in front of the next worried owner with a cotton pad in their hand. And subscribe if you want the next one. I'm breaking down the real reason behind tear stains on white-faced dogs, and it starts closer to the water bowl than you'd ever guess.